Hello, my name is Dr. Ken Reimer. I am an assistant professor in inclusive education and currently the acting associate dean of the Faculty of Education here at the University of Winnipeg. And I thank you very much for listening to my presentation today. My presentation today is titled Blending Student Autonomy with Collaboration Through Project-Based Learning. Before we begin, I'd just like to show you I'd like to show you my favorite bird. It's called the Canada goose. I understand that you may have these Canada geese in Russia as well, but I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about my experiences and the Canadian experiences with these mighty birds as a bit of a metaphor or an image to what I'm about to talk about today, which relates to the importance of creating student autonomy and promoting student collaboration. So I begin with the mighty Canada goose. Now here in Winnipeg, Canada, geese have caused many issues for people. For example, we here in Winnipeg have we have a lot of Canadian geese that are now currently residing in a highly populated urban center, and we get some issues. So for example, the geese will often take over highways or roads, and cars have been frozen to a stop. Here's an example in Edmonton, which is a city not far from us, where two Canadian geese decided to cross a bridge and stop traffic for a good deal of time because they felt like crossing at their same time. The Canadian geese here, I'm not sure how they are in Russia, but in Canada, you must mind yourself and be quite careful when you confront one, let's say on a hike or a trail or a path. They have been known to, when confronted, they are quite cantankerous animals, and they have been known to take their wing and swat children and even break arms. They have been known to chase people ruthlessly, and they are creatures that are quite formidable, and they like to be left alone. In fact, this has been documented in our national news, and to the point where this article came up about 2 years ago, where people even wondered if Canadians and Canada geese could ever find peace working together. And yet, when I think of the Canada goose, there is no creature on Earth that can collaborate and work with others, their own species, in order to accomplish a collective purpose. So for example, I think of Canadian geese flying south every winter because it's very cold here, and they fly south and they fly in a perfect V. You likely have seen this. If not, you can YouTube it. But Canadian geese fly in a V and collaborate together very well so that they can fly south and north as they need to. And this has always presented a very powerful image for me. A Canada goose, on one hand, likes to be very autonomous and will fight for their autonomy and their independence, even at the expense and endangerment of their own lives. And yet when they need to collaborate, when they need to do something together, they're able to do so in a manner that few species can mirror or replicate. And so I'd like to talk, as our theme is one of the themes of this video presentations is on autonomy. I'd like to talk about the delicate balancing act of autonomy versus collaboration, and how we need to promote both for students, particularly students with exceptional needs. The balance between autonomy and collaboration, as Shapiro discussed, is a challenge. It is the core relational challenge for everyone to figure out how to satisfy your desire to be simultaneously one with the other party, and this can be affiliation or collaboration, and one that is apart from the other party. And this is autonomy. Autonomy is a key component of self-determination. Sjogren and Shaw say that it's one of the 4 important tenets of promoting self-determination for youth with disabilities. Autonomy can be argued to be the most important criteria. A focus on instruction to promote skills associated with autonomy, that is, giving students, all students, including those with disabilities, choice-making opportunities, and right to self-advocacy may be the strongest relationship with employment and post-secondary outcomes, particularly for those with learning disabilities. If we would like our students with exceptional needs to be able to have a fully autonomous, independent, have access to all the good things in life after they leave us, then we must promote autonomy, such as choice-making opportunities and self-advocacies while students are in school, and we must create opportunities often in meaningful, authentic ways. So I did a little bit of research on the benefits and the disadvantages of autonomy. This may seem unusual because this is a speaker series where we are promoting autonomy, but I think that we do need to just cover some of these. Some of the benefits of autonomy are improved attitudes. People enjoy being given the opportunity to be heuristic and discover things on their own and create things on their own, so attitudes are improved. There is an increased organizational commitment. There have been a number of studies done with companies that when employees are allowed to work on projects periodically on their own, that they will develop a greater loyalty for their company. And also you'll get to see greater innovation. You'll actually get to see students be able to share what's truly inside of them. And this can be just a remarkable discovery for both the teacher and the student, and it allows for innovation. Some disadvantages, sometimes disadvantages to promoting autonomy and creating an autonomous classroom can mean increased stress levels due to the added responsibilities of decision making. This is something you'll need to navigate through for students, particularly students who may not have had much experience or opportunity in their lives to be able to have choice and be able to make their own decisions and do so independently. Lack of preparation, this is what I'm speaking about, is oftentimes students don't have experiences for autonomous opportunities, and therefore the lack of preparation sets up for failure. And finally, let's be honest, if we entirely allow students to be autonomous, there can be, just like in the workplace, an abuse of privileges due to decreases in supervision or accountability. And so we must be mindful of these benefits and disadvantages to autonomy. There are benefits and disadvantages to collaboration, although we also speak very highly, particularly as educators, about teaching students how to collaborate and cooperate and work together. Of course, we want to incorporate that and promote these opportunities, but there are benefits and there are also disadvantages to collaborating. One of the benefits could be the pooling of a more diverse balancing of decision making. Number two, you can get increased creative input. What we mean is we put all these brilliant minds together and we can produce some wonderful ideas. And finally, improved efficiency. Hypothetically or theoretically, when we put more people together and assign them with a task, things can be divvied up or divided, and people can certainly get things done in a more efficient manner, provided they work together. Some disadvantages: collaborating can be time-consuming, and we need to recognize this. Also, it can really increase the potential for disagreements and infighting, and this again may be due to lack of preparation, as students are often not given the opportunity to build skill sets as to how to work collaboratively with their peers or with others. One of the things that we do here in Canada that we are seeing more and more often in our classrooms is something called project-based learning. This may not be a new term for you, but I'd like to just discuss how we see or interpret project-based learning here in Canada and how we try to interpret this and then put it into practice in the classroom. Project-based learning, or PBL, prepares students for academic, personal, and career success and readies young people to rise to the challenges of their lives and the world that they will inherit. Now, one thing just to make clear: projects have been done in classrooms by students and assigned by teachers for many generations. Assigning projects in the classroom is not a new thing. However, project-based learning is different than just doing a project. When students do a project, it's typically a less intense short-term experience. Often this is completed at the end of the unit. With project-based learning, and this is very, very important, the project is the unit. I'll say that again. For project-based learning, the project is the unit. 7 essential project design elements. 1, you assign students, all students, with a challenging problem or question, and this can be based on a theme. Now, according to Vygotsky's zones of proximal development, we want to give a problem that is challenging enough to keep students engaged and get them engaged in the topic, but not too challenging that they simply shut down. But you must give a challenging problem, one that cannot be resolved or solved within an hour or two or even a weekend. We're talking about students immersing themselves into this problem for several weeks if possible. And that goes to the second point, that we must have sustained inquiry. We cannot simply just assign something on an evening and have something due. That's just a little project. It's short term and it's intense, but it will not cover the aspects of the curriculum you need to do. With sustained inquiry, combined with authenticity of the project, then what can happen is you can have students really immerse themselves into the problem and thus immerse themselves, if this is a cleverly designed project assignment, immerse themselves into the curriculum that you are trying to instill within the students. You must incorporate student voice and choice. Now, this doesn't mean you leave it wide open. We certainly here in Canada can give themes. So if the theme is Canada's oceans, then you must give them some voice and choice of what that actually means within the framework of you wanting to look at the oceans, for example. You must encourage reflections. Students learn through reflection, and so they must be able to make some mistakes. They must be able to correct those mistakes. They must be able to produce a product that, while it may not be absolutely successful the first time around, they have opportunities to revise. This comes through number 6 component of an essential project design element, and that's critique and revision. You must allow students to revise. You must allow students to have peer critique, to have teacher critique, to have feedback, to be given rubrics, but these are really, really important. And the 7th component of a project design, a successful one, must be the students must produce a public project. And this is something that is really popular with students, including students with disabilities. Let me give you an example. It used to be that in school, in traditional schools, if you wanted a student to tell a teacher about something, they would write a paper, give it to the teacher. The teacher would be the only audience that this paper would see. The teacher would provide feedback, and the student may or may not read that feedback. They likely would just look at the final grade. With public product, we are giving students deep, sustained problems, and they have to study that problem, immerse themselves in that problem, and then design a project that can perhaps make the world a better place. And we encourage, and schools are encouraging more and more, we see projects on social media. We see these projects being allowed to be presented at museums or at parent nights or with other teachers or with other students, but allow students to create something that the public can see and that the student can explain. This is really meaningful to students. Students want an audience larger than just their teacher. 6 A's of project design. Number 1, and I've covered this, is authenticity. Make it a real world problem. Make it something that the students can relate to, particularly students from marginalized communities or students who have not had a voice for whatever reason. Give them projects that they can tackle that can directly relate and impact their lives, or at least their community's lives. Academic rigor is important. We are not talking about just simply giving students little fluffy projects. We need to promote academic rigor. These need to be challenging projects. Apply their learning. This is important. Students want to know, why are we learning this? So when you teach students something, and I believe that you still can teach in traditional manners with all students, you must be able to apply the learning and actually, again, help make the world a better place by creating something better. Active exploration. Students must be active researchers, active scientists, actively engaged in their own learning and seek their own learning out. The teacher is there to help guide and facilitate this learning. They are not there to be the primary director of this learning. Number 5, adult and peer relationships. These we can see great improvement when students are assigned tasks and big projects that they can work on their own or with others. This gives an opportunity for students who may not have friends in the classroom, who do not feel that they have something to offer other students. These are students that are very vulnerable and at risk. We can give these students an opportunity to connect with other students in their classrooms and build up some reciprocity, make some friends. Finally, assessment is really, really important. You must find a way to have an authentic assessment. And I don't just mean a letter grade, but I mean allow feedback from the public audience when students produce a product so that students can get much more rich feedback that can certainly help them in their lives. I think these are things that can promote student autonomy and student collaboration. Now, I just want to, in the next 5 minutes, and then I'll show you a short video, give you an example of something that we've brought into Canada. And before I do that, let's make sure that the benefits that all students are tasked with authentic real-world problems. All students who are more engaged in learning. Curriculum can be creatively included and applied. All students are provided with choice. With PBL, all students have autonomy to choose projects. All students learn to work collaboratively with others. All students create sophisticated products that can best demonstrate their learning. And all students are held accountable to their own learning. And now I'd like to show you a project that I've brought in, and this is done in collaboration with the University of Cambridge, Departments of Engineering and the Faculty of Education, and the University of Winnipeg Faculty of Engineering. And I want to share this with you just as an example of how project-based learning can actually look so that you can learn about this at your conference, and then you can incorporate this into your classroom for those educators that are returning to the classroom within a week or two of time. While you don't have to do this particular project, I think this will give you a pretty good framework as to what we're looking at. This is called DOT, or Designing Our Tomorrow. Again, this is a partnership between the University of Cambridge's Faculty of Education and Department of Engineering. And the goal of this is to equip every child with the thinking tools to solve problems in a complex world. DOT Canada, in case you're interested, is comprised of Bill Nickel, Ian Hosking, and Melanie Smith from the University of Cambridge, and myself as lead investigator, and Ken McCluskey here at the University of Winnipeg. The purpose of it is to solve problems. Now with DOT, we are encouraging students, and this is students from grade 7 to grade 12, to take and tackle on problems that are unique to their community, so they're local problems. We believe that context is important. There's no reason teaching students in a landlocked city like Winnipeg, maybe there are some small ideas, as to how to save the whales on the opposite end of the world when we're a landlocked city. But there is a good idea how to save our local fishing and fisheries, and how we can improve the health of our freshwater lakes around. These are contextual problems, and these are important problems for our children to examine, learn from, and then solve. DOT Canada is really about bringing in Pupil Voice. And the reason I bring up DOT is I think that this is a project that really mirrors when in 2014 I was at North Caucasus Federal University and visiting, and we had the opportunity to visit the Territory of Mutual Understanding. And the Territory of Mutual Understanding was a brilliant idea because it allowed people to through simulation, various simulating exercises, experience what it was like to navigate your way through the world without the use of your legs, or without the use of eyesight, or with hearing impairments, or perhaps with other neurological based disorders or behaviors. And the idea of promoting empathy is really important. DOT also tries to promote empathy, and they do it through project-based learning called empathic engineering. And so I'll show you a video very, very shortly, but in this video that will conclude my presentation, you will see that students initially are given gloves and glasses that simulate what it's like for the elderly to navigate their way through the world with arthritis, or with joint issues, and also with cataracts, or with glaucoma, or other visual impairments. And students interact with everyday products as if they had these disabilities or impairments. Students will then create some empathy. Then, for about a week, the teacher will immerse the students into various lessons where they will learn about design principles, because they will need to realize that when you have restricted movement of your hands, when you have restricted sight, it's very difficult to do a simple task every day, such as salting your food with a salt shaker. And students will realize this. After they've learned some design management skills and design project skills, what the students will do is then they will be tasked with creating better salt and pepper shakers. And then it is amazing what can happen. Students will often work individually. Oftentimes they will create a team, and they will be tasked with designing a prototype for a better way to dispense salt and pepper shakers. I'll save you all the details, but I can tell you that within that week, we, with students from ages grade 7 to grade 12, so we're talking about students from 12 to 18 years of age, were highly engaged in the project. Many students, when it was finished, wanted to continue working on the project. They wanted to pitch this project. We've seen increased classroom engagement. Students with learning disabilities felt that all students in the classroom had the opportunity with this PBL, such as DOT, to just feel smart and creative and intelligent, and that they had pupil voice. And so I conclude this video, and I thank you very much for listening, and I thank the University of Winnipeg for allowing us to create these videos. I conclude with a video that the students made 100% that shows their experiences with a project-based learning opportunity, in this case, Designing Our Tomorrow. Thank you very much. Spasiba. Goodbye.
Hey, what's going on right now?
Oh, hey, we're designing our tomorrow. Want to take a look?
The major issue that the world's facing is that at this current point we have over 600 million people at the age of 60 plus, and by 2050 we're going to be around 2.1 billion people. This is a challenge because with an aging population, we need to redesign products that are in our everyday use, such as salt and pepper shakers, which we're using today.
The main two objects that students used in the Designing Our Tomorrow's investigation were a set of gloves that went over their hands that simulated what it would be like to have arthritis and restricted mobility in the hands, and goggles that were worn that simulated what it would be like to have impairment of the vision.
I would say the hardest thing to use was the bottle opener, because I had my limited dexterity. I was forced to use my palms for that one, so it really hurt my fingers and my palms just opening the bottle.
Designing for inclusivity means designing for the majority of the population. It means from the very beginning of the design process, thinking about making it useful for most people rather than just a narrow segment of the population.
We're so used to seeing things in a certain way. This item is only used for this item, and to see it in a different way, expect it to be used in a different way, is really challenging. And so the students are trying to see different things in their life that maybe associate with one thing, and then trying to associate with solving the problem right now, which is salt and pepper shaker.
For our design and our product, we really wanted to incorporate the idea of having the salt and pepper as one. We came up with a triangle design, trying to keep it minimal and aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but still trying to find a comfortable way of holding it for individuals with limited dexterity.
We were trying to make an easy, clean way of making a salt shaker. So it's similar to like a salt pellet, where you could just easily take it out and just grind it into your food.
A lot of cool stuff is happening around here. Look at that!
So the reason why Sisler IDM students that are involved in this workshop is the fact that they have been practicing STEAM education for the last 3 to 4 years. STEM is a fantastical way of redesigning products, but adding the art into it takes their learning to the next level.